When the smoke of Arracourt thinned, the wrecks of German Panthers lay scattered across the French countryside like broken monuments to a fading empire. For every burned-out Sherman, there were now 2 or 3 Panthers smoldering beside it, victims not of brute force, but of speed and surprise. Reports from the field astonished German intelligence officers. Some believed the Americans had fielded a new secret weapon, perhaps a tank with aircraft engines. The truth was simpler and more unnerving. The M18 Hellcat had proven that velocity could kill. To the men who crewed it, the Hellcat was both liberation and gamble. Inside its thin armor plate, every sound was amplified. The clatter of the radial engine, the rattle of spent shells, the whistle of incoming rounds. There was no illusion of safety. A single 20mm burst could turn its open turret into a death trap. Yet crews swore by it. Sergeant Harold Red Foster of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion described it as a race car with teeth. He and his men learned to move like duelists: strike, shift, reload, vanish. "You didn't think about being hit," he recalled years later. "You thought about hitting first." The Hellcat's mobility redefined what was possible for armored warfare. Where German units relied on tight coordination and methodical advances, American tank destroyers operated like wolves in packs, dispersed, unpredictable, lethal. They used the terrain as a weapon: hedgerows for cover, sunken lanes for ambush, speed for invisibility. German crews, trained to fight from advantage, suddenly found themselves trapped in battles they couldn't control. Their turrets, slow and heavy, turned too late. Their armor, once impervious, became irrelevant when the enemy never stayed still long enough to be hit. Behind every successful Hellcat ambush was Doctrine as deliberate as any panzer tactic. Tank destroyer units were trained to deploy in small hunter-killer groups, each vehicle covering another's retreat path. Engagements were decided in seconds. A Hellcat would race to a firing position, deliver 2 or 3 rapid shots, then reverse at full speed into concealment before counterfire arrived. Coordination was done by hand signals, quick bursts over radio, or sheer intuition honed through repetition. Success depended not on armor thickness, but on nerve, and the shared understanding that survival meant constant motion. The Hellcat's open turret, a necessity born from its quest for lightness, had its own grim trade-offs. In the hedgerows of France and the forests of the Ardennes, shrapnel was constant. Rain turned exposed interiors into slick, freezing traps. Snow gathered on the breech and froze fingers to steel. Yet the open air gave commanders unmatched visibility. Precious seconds to spot enemy movement. Seconds that meant life or death. "You could feel the battlefield breathing," one crewman said, "but it could feel you too." Production ramped up through 1944. Buick's assembly lines in Flint. Michigan became a symphony of steel and precision, turning out over 2,500 Hellcats in less than a year. American industry achieved what German engineers could not: speed in both machine and manufacture. While the Reich poured dwindling resources into perfecting the Tiger II, a marvel on paper, a nightmare in logistics, the United States sent fast, reliable destroyers to every front where armor was needed. For every Tiger that rolled off a German line, 10 Hellcats left American factories, each ready to be shipped, fueled, and fielded within weeks. By autumn, the Hellcat had proven itself from France to Italy. In the Vosges, it darted through mountain passes where heavier tanks could not go. In the Po Valley, it raced ahead of infantry to intercept retreating columns. Even in the Ardennes, during the bitter winter of the Battle of the Bulge, Hellcat units fought with the same restless energy, flanking, repositioning, harassing German armor despite freezing temperatures that choked engines and stiffened controls. Their success was not in the number of tanks destroyed, but in the tempo they imposed. Wherever the Hellcat appeared, the enemy's advance slowed, hesitated, then fractured. Crews often painted names on their machines: Devil's Run, Eagle's Claw, Sweet Eloise. They treated them like living things, part companion, part weapon. Maintenance was as vital as marksmanship. Every bolt and bearing mattered. A jammed traverse or a fouled breech could mean death. At night, engines were stripped and cleaned by lantern light, tracks tightened, guns swabbed. The men spoke to their Hellcats as if they could hear, pleading for one more run, one more day. Few machines of the war inspired such fierce devotion from those who knew their fragility so well. Arracourt had been the revelation, but it was not the end. In the months that followed, as the Allies crossed the Rhine and pushed toward Germany's heartland, the Hellcat became the spear point of the advance. It roamed ahead of infantry, hunted stragglers, blocked counterattacks. Each engagement reinforced the same paradox. The fastest tank destroyer of the war was also one of the lightest. It was not invulnerability that carried it forward, it was belief. Belief in doctrine, in motion, in the conviction that survival lay in never standing still. By the war's end, the M18 Hellcat had written its own kind of legend. It destroyed hundreds of enemy tanks, yet its greatest victory was philosophical. It proved that agility could be armor, that movement could be defense, that speed, pure and disciplined, could rewrite the rules of battle forged in steel and fire. And though the war would soon end, the lessons it carried would not. For the men who rode inside it, the Hellcat was more than a weapon. It was the heartbeat of a new kind of warfare, the machine that outran death.